Good job.
We're so excited to be here today. I am so excited to talk to you, Kristen, about the career path and how today's career path is not exactly linear. And I think we should tell the audience, if you could start from the beginning kind of about your career path, because I think it's important for everyone to kind of understand the different roles. And very exciting, I hope I'm allowed to say this. I'm going to say it anyway.
You can say whatever you want.
Kristen just is going to be starting a new role. So we talk about how the career paths are sometimes unexpected. So give us a background.
Yes. Former Chief Merchandising Officer of PetSmart as of last week. So I'm excited about a new opportunity. But yes, I think I'm excited to be here. I love this topic. We are both very passionate about this topic because I think as I reflect back in the beginning of my career, there was so much stress about being on the right path and making the right choices. And, you know, I was the first person in my family to go to college. And so my parents were just so proud that I made it out with a degree. And my first job was in consulting at Accenture. And it was an incredible experience. I learned so much. And the biggest lesson I learned was that consulting is not for me. It just, to me, felt like I was too far away from the action. You know, I can build an insane PowerPoint deck, and I can speak, you know, in front of people. When you're in consulting, you're put in front of big groups of people before you probably should be. But so I learned a ton, but, you know, I was there for 4 years, and I was like, this is not, I'm too far away from the action. And then I went to the other end of the spectrum, which is I worked in small business development for the Peace Corps. So talk about like from one to the other. And I enjoyed that because for a couple of reasons. Number one is the Peace Corps is something I had always wanted to do. Serendipitously, the Accenture office and the Peace Corps office are right, they probably aren't anymore, but they were right next to each other in downtown Chicago, which is like bizarre. So I roll into the Peace Corps office, probably dressed like this, and they were like, can I help you? And so I lived in El Salvador for 27 months. I worked in small business development. I worked alongside these incredible women that they were all artisans. They made hand-woven rugs and clay pots, and they couldn't quite figure out how to bring their product to market. And so I loved that role because of the impact I was able to have, and I loved their product. I also made like $160 a month or something like that. So I was like, we got to figure out how to monetize this differently so I can live. But it was an incredible experience. And then from there, I went to business school where I studied marketing and started to really think about what's next for me. And so if you're keeping track, that is 8 years in the beginning of my career where I was spending more time figuring out what I didn't like versus what I did like. And so talk about, like, in business school, I was like, I have to figure out what's next for me. And Target was actually recruiting. And I ended up at Target in Minneapolis right after business school. My first job there was the candy buyer, which was an amazing experience, horrible for the waistline. But I learned so much, and I absolutely fell in love with retail. It was the perfect mix of, you know, you're right in the middle of the action. You're sort of like the CEO of your business. You're working cross-functionally. You're always learning. You know, at Target, I was in 9 jobs in 11 years. They weren't always linear, so we'll talk a little bit about what that looks like. But I had always wanted to, my dad's an entrepreneur. I had always wanted to do something entrepreneurial. And so 11 years in, I was the vice president of beauty and personal care, which was an incredible job in an amazing industry. I decided to leave. And so I left, and I launched a fitness concept in the Twin Cities, and I did that for 4 years, and it was an incredible experience. We can talk a little bit about that, but I did something completely different. And then I really I had sort of the itch of going back to retail. And so PetSmart called in 2019. And it's sort of like, I'm like, yeah, I'm not looking for a job. I'm happy to consult for you, but like, I'm not looking for a job. And lo and behold, I ended up there. And was the chief merchant for almost 5 years. And again, like my phone rang a few months ago for a different opportunity, and I was like, no, I don't think I want to do that. But then as I had continued the conversation, my next opportunity is something that's pretty different than what I'm doing today. And I think the sort of learning in all of that is just be curious, ask questions, and be willing to try new things, and be okay if your career path isn't like A, B, C, D, the way it's supposed to be laid out. So that's sort of the big picture of my zigging and zagging.
It's great, though. I love your story because it's true. Really, I love how you said I took the things away that I didn't like.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people, when they start their career, they think they're going to land that perfect job on day one, and we know that's not reality.
Yes.
The other thing I love that you say is you have to act like a dog, learn new tricks. So tell us about that philosophy.
Yeah, one of our values at PetSmart is, and I still say please all still shop at PetSmart. It's great. We love pets, and we believe pets make us better people. Who doesn't love that? One of the core values is learn new tricks. And, it is so simple. It is what we talk about with our pets, with our dogs. But it's also really true for us as humans. I think, when I think about my career, there were moments where I got tapped on the shoulder to do certain roles, and I was literally like, I don't know if I even know how to spell that. Like, I don't have any experience in that. I can't do it. You have this sort of imposter syndrome. But I think that's really where the growth is to try new things, to be curious, to be vulnerable, to not feel like you have to go in with all the answers, to leverage your team, and to just try stuff. So, I'm starting a new role in the middle of March, and my scope is I have an organization that I've never actually, I will have marketing. I have never worked in marketing before. I've always worked in merchandising. And so I'm not going in there as this like marketing prowess, but I can coach and develop and lead a team so that they can flex their magic and their talent in a way that will hopefully allow us to win in the marketplace.
Yeah, I think the other thing that's really important is your idea of this volunteering for things and really having the confidence to volunteer for things that maybe you're not comfortable volunteering for.
Yeah, absolutely. So what I have learned about myself is I'm a builder, which means that I kind of love the mess, which is crazy. And so I like to try new things. That's sort of the entrepreneurial sort of spirit. And one of the things, so I always tell people who I mentor to like raise your hand for the hard job. Raise your hand for something that people are like, oh, I don't know about that. Maybe that's not going to go well. And so one examples of that, which has been one of the most pivotal learnings in my career, when I was at Target, we decided that we wanted to open stores in Canada. I don't know if you guys remember that. So I was like, yes, let's do that. So at the time, I had 2 small kids. They were almost 2 and almost 4. And I was like, I want to be part of that team. That sounds incredible. Like the opportunity to go open a retailer overseas, like, yes, I want to do that. And Target was like, are you sure? Like, you've got 2 kids or whatever. And I said yes. And then when I ended up moving to Toronto, I was pregnant with our 3rd. So talk about like hard job and also like trying to be a mom and raise kids. And I have an incredible partner that's super supportive. But so I opened Target Canada, and if you guys know how that went, I closed Target Canada. So it didn't go great. But I will tell you, like from a leadership perspective, I learned so much about my own leadership, but I got to watch. The lesson here is like, don't waste a good crisis. That was a disaster for a lot of reasons. And what you learn very quickly is a simple lesson that like, I can't necessarily control all of it. The only thing I can control is how I show up for my team. And honestly, that's what matters most. Because at the end of the day, we are all people. And how we feel about the crisis matters, right? And so I got to watch leaders crumble, leaders rise up, leaders get mad, leaders get frustrated, so you see it all. And then you get to decide how you want to manage through it. So for me, I was like, I can't control all of it, but I'm not going to make this a miserable experience for me and my team. And so we managed through it in a way that it wasn't perfect, obviously, but I'm pretty proud of the way that we managed through it. And so having gone through something like that, I mean, I moved back to Minneapolis with my tail between my legs. I was sort of like, maybe I'm going to get fired. I'm not sure. I don't know if you guys have had moments in your career where you're like, this might be it, but that was it for me. And I actually got put in a great job. And the reason why is because, our chief merchant was like, I saw you. I saw what you did. And I saw the way that you lead. And that's what we need. So, after having gone through that, where I had to stand in front of the board and tell them how much money we were losing the enterprise and all that, like nothing phases me. I can do anything at this point because you just sort of like, it's all just how you manage it.
I love this story. It's a great story. You got thrown into the fire, and although it wasn't successful for Target in terms of going to Canada, it was certainly successful for you. And you and I share a love of helping women. No offense to the men in the audience, but we love to help women succeed. But I really believe women have a harder time of it.
Yeah, I think so. I'm not a man, so I can't speak for you guys, but I think so. But I also think men struggle as well, and I'll start with the men and then I'll go to women. I think men struggle too, as I'm married to one, so I get to hear the intimate struggles that he has. But one of the stories that has stuck with me is, so I have 3 kids, which means I went on 3 maternity leaves, which means 3 times I was like, oh God, I don't know how this is going to impact my career. We'll talk about that in a second. But recently, I had a guy on my team, and his wife had their first baby. And at PetSmart, we have a great paternity leave. And she's getting ready to have her baby. And I said to him, I was like, Matt, we've got this great paternity leave. You should take advantage. And he was sort of like, don't worry. She's going to have a baby, but don't worry. I'm not going to take paternity leave. And I was like, don't worry? What do you mean? We have the benefit for a reason. And underneath all of that, don't worry, I'm not going to take paternity leave, is the same feeling that women feel when they go on maternity leave, which is, I want to be seen as a team player. I want to be seen as all in. I'm here, And I was like, absolutely not. You have to take paternity leave. You having your first child is way more important than us selling more dog food. So go do that. And he did, and so it was great. But I think, I have had the experience having children in high-level roles, and I am always worried that when I leave for 3 or 4, I highly recommend 4 months, that I'm going to come back and I'm going to sort of be seen as not all in.
Right.
And, how I got over that in the beginning was to just seek out other women in high-level roles that have done the same thing, and there are not many of us. And so, I think that if I could just say 2 things that women could do as they contemplate their career and family is, it is a choice and you can do both, but the 2 things you sort of have to do are, 1, be really vulnerable with your leadership and the people that you work with, and let them know what you need. And that's really important. Only you are able to set your own boundaries. Nobody else is going to do it for you. And so if you need 16 weeks, then you need 16 weeks, and that's what you say. And if you want to come back and be all in and continue on your career path, then that's what you say. But you have to be willing to be vulnerable and do that. And then the second thing is, when you do come back from maternity leave, you have to, see point number 1, you have to set your own boundaries. So for me, happy hour is such a part of our culture, but I don't do happy hour because I have 3 kids who are in soccer and hockey and all this stuff. So I'm like, I would love to hang with you, but it's going to be coffee in the morning, it's going to be lunch, it's not going to be happy hour. So those are just sort of boundaries that I think you have to set for yourself.
Great advice. I love the balancing. I want to jump to our next question because this is really important. So we have all these expanding roles now. So the roles of yesterday aren't the roles of today. How can we prepare for this, these new big roles that have a lot of different, skills required?
Yeah, I love that question. And I think there's been all this research done on the difference between men and women and how they approach roles that they maybe haven't done before, right? And so I don't know if this resonates with you guys, but what the research says is men tend to raise their hands for jobs that are the next level or the next level or in areas that they haven't worked in before, believing that they'll get there and be able to figure it out. Women tend to feel like, before I raise my hand for that job, I need to prove to myself that I know how to do it. So we tend to not raise our hands until we actually have had experience in a role. And that fundamental difference, I think, is what sets us back sometimes as women. So I would just encourage you guys, as you continue along in your career, the biggest lesson is it is not about your ability to do your team's job. If you have ever been micromanaged, I am not sure if there's anything worse, right? That is not fun. So I am not gonna go into my new organization and sit side by side with the marketers and be like, okay guys, what are we doing today? How's that CRM campaign? Who's our partner? That, they do not need me to do that. Yeah. Our jobs are really to figure out how to lead the team, how to get rid of barriers, how to allow them to work across the enterprise, how to move faster, how to give them the tools that they need, how to support and develop their own growth. If we can do that, then the experts in the functional area can unleash their magic on the business. And so I would just encourage you, I think the myth of the linear career path is real. I think having opportunities to do things outside of your cross-functional area is important because toward the end of your career, when you want broader scope, you have to be able to demonstrate. So when I was having this conversation, it was like, yes, I've never led marketing before, but let me tell you all of the cross-functional areas I have worked in supply chain, operations, planning, you name it, and how I approach that is similar to how I will approach this new area.
That's great. I got to ask you one last question. I know we're running out of time, but this is probably the most important question. So men, women, whomever, what holds people back? Really, what holds us back?
Yeah, I think two big things. One is a little bit what I talked about before. We all, regardless of our gender, have imposter syndrome, which means the voice in our head. There is a voice in our head. Sometimes it's really loud and sometimes it's quiet, but there's always a voice telling us that we're not worthy to be on a stage. We're not worthy to give a presentation in front of a ton of people. We're not worthy for that next job. We're not worthy. We're not able to. We need to prove to ourselves. Literally silence that voice. Silence that voice and just go into opportunities vulnerable and willing to be open to feedback and coaching, but with a sense of, I am here to learn and support and be optimistic about what we can do. So that's, I think, the first thing that holds us back. And then the second thing is, I think we get too focused on the A, B, C of your career path. When you walk into a role and you're in a large enterprise, it's in retail, it's okay, you're an associate buyer, then you're a buyer, then you're a senior buyer, then you're a director, then you're a VP, then blah, 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 blah. Who cares? When I hire leaders, I want to see cross-functional experience. So I would just say, take the risk to do the job that is off the beaten path, and you will be successful if you continue to cultivate your network.
Let's give it up for Kristen Shane.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Shelley.